And this thing's eyes are just these two glowing green coals. And again, picture half a foot of distance in between them.
If you like strange Bigfoot encounters, then tonight's episode's for you. We've got a gentleman that came on the show, and he's from the state of Michigan. He's had all kinds of strange stuff happen on that property while he was out researching. He's captured portals, seen several Bigfoot on the property. He's got lots of evidence, large eyes he was able to capture on photo as well as video. We're going to go through all that. But his first encounter happened to him in Ohio when him and his girlfriend were out camping. They had scratches on the side of the cabin, wood knocks, and this thing ended up charging the side of their house or the cabin that they were staying in. We're going to dive into all of that. But before we do, I just want to say thanks for being here tonight. Couldn't do the show without you. If you've had an encounter, I would love to hear it. You can email me at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into the story.
I'm an Air Force veteran. I was in for 6 years. I was logistics and supply, like material management. And then I did a little bit of security forces, augmentee training. So I kind of I got like the boredom side, like how we get the stuff, and then I got to do the other cool stuff. You know what I mean? Like I got to have a little bit of a spectrum, but I've always had a belief in Bigfoot, conspiracies, all that kind of stuff. Like it just always grabbed me, you know? Basically what happened was I live in Monroe, Michigan. So it's I'm right downtown, lots of sirens, you want to get away to the peace, and being that I'm from Northern Michigan, that's in my blood, So I'm like, all right, me and my girlfriend at the time, I'm like, I'm going to get an off grid, like Airbnb from like VRBO or something and see what I can find. And I kind of had the intention of making it kind of Bigfooty a little bit. Like, why not pick it in a spot in Ohio that's already known for Sasquatch sightings? I was about 27 miles from Hocking Hills, which, as you know, State Park is already a massive Bigfoot hotspot. And we are in Athens, Ohio. And I'm talking like, dude, this is a town of probably like 700 people. I'm thinking this Airbnb was on this farmer's property. You're going like a half mile down the driveway to park in front of the barn. He's got this little, like, almost like a fuse box looking thing that has the cabin keys. And then you're hiking into the woods another like 3/4 of a mile just to get to your cabin. You're literally like in the Ohio Tucky foothills pretty much. And I'm like, all right, this is perfect. Nobody's really around. The other nearest cabin is like a mile from us. So my girlfriend at the time, she was skeptical, but still open minded. She's like, I'm not saying they're not real, but I need something that she's very scientific approach to it. So I'm like, I'm going to do a little wood knocking at night. Let's get our stuff in and start a fire. Cause what else are you going to do? There's not even a lot of phone service out there. It's fantastic. So we're starting a fire. And as it starts to get dark, it's just that canopy's thick in July, man. It's probably 85 degrees, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And it's really starting to close in fast in that dark. And I'm just thinking, I'm just going to start filming in random directions just to see if I can find anything. Always go over your footage. You never know what you might find on it later on. I still find stuff from months ago that I overlooked. Like once you know what to look for, you're going to see it again. You know what I mean? And we're sitting around the fire, and I grabbed one of the chunks from the cord of firewood, and I told my girlfriend about, this is wood knocking. Watch this. And I go over to the tree, just kind of playfully showing her, but hoping that something might actually respond. And I did like a sequence of 3. Nothing really happened. So I just kind of chucked it back down, sat back in the chair. 10 minutes later, we heard a whoop, and then we heard a couple wood knocks. And I heard it right off. And she's like, the skeptic brain takes a minute to turn on and be like, yeah, I did hear that. They want to deny. And I'm like, you heard that, right? How many primates do you know exist in the forests of Ohio that would have a monkey sounding whoop like that? And then we didn't really think anything of it. It's like, whatever. You're sitting around the fire and it's getting darker, and we start hearing all of the snapping of things kind of like approaching us, kind of being flanked. And that's when I'm like, all right, we're just going to go inside. We're just going to go inside the cabin. You know what I mean? So we go in, lock the door behind us, which wasn't much of anything. It was just one of those tiny little slide over bolts. It was basically a camper put on top of a homemade deck is what it was. It was like a solar powered bathroom and everything. Like it was pretty cool, man. It really was. But I learned not to wood knock, kind of, because you never know what they're saying. And if you say something back that might be the wrong thing, you're never going to hit the right decibel. You're never going to hit the right tone. It'd be like offending somebody by repeating something back to them in Japanese and then, making it really bad. Like, so I didn't think much of it. So we're laying in bed, and stuff starts like literally scratching the walls, like in the middle of the night. And I'm like, could be raccoons. Okay, let's let it be. Try to go to sleep. All of a sudden, she wakes me up, and because she couldn't sleep at all, she's terrified. Something on 2 feet had walked over to the window, because like right when you walked inside, it was like a little back room was where the bed was, and then there was like a window, and it was like 9 or 10 feet off the ground. And she said something's walking up towards the building right now on 2 feet. And I'm like, I freaking told you Bigfoot's out here. This is exactly why I picked this area. I was hoping we get some activity. And she's like, could it be human? I'm like, it could be. But how many human footprints, walk up and suddenly just stop and like they were never there, just walking off into silence? You know what I mean? She couldn't really believe that. She was kind of blown away. So we were like, all right, whatever, let's go back to bed because we're sure ain't going outside. And then next thing I know, something charges into the side of the cabin, like with the intent of going through. It probably shifted it a couple inches, and I woke up out of a dead sleep, and I'm like, that wasn't no deer. Like that was not a random. That was a targeted hit for sure. And I'm like, all right, we got to get out of here. Second daylight hits. I don't think they wanted to hurt us, but at the time you're in shock because you're like, okay, this is what I've researched my whole life and wanted to happen. Am I really wanting it to happen right now? Because that's the kind of experience that will make you never go in the woods again. Not me though. I'm kind of dumb that way. I'm continuously ready for more action every single time. And I found some footprints the next day. I caught some on camera. It was a decent little farm, man, and he was just renting out the like hunting cabin on the property. This thing's holding the sheep, looking right back at me. Huge Sasquatch, just looking right back at me with the sheep, and I'm like, okay, they're known to kill livestock and steal it for dinner and take it back home. You know what I mean? There were probably 7 Bigfoots in the woods that night. I'm willing to bet they got that sheep to take it back home to feed the rest of the squatch. That's what I thought it was, and then I was completely enamored. It's no longer is Bigfoot real. We're well past that. Now it's what is it? And that's from there I really started to go more esoteric with it. And that's when I really came up on and talking to like some preachers that research Bigfoot, because I want this to be as much of a Christ and God driven journey as possible. I'm not calling them from different star systems and stuff like that. I don't think that's what it is. So that's kind of where I got with it. And I'm like, we're looking at a supernatural being here. How else is it going to carry a 75-pound sheep, not even making noise? Like you can see the fingers right here. You can see the thumb by the back thigh on the sheep. The head is just hanging over, and you can straight see like just before they get sheared. And this Sasquatch is just like this. Like, yeah, I got dinner. What? We never seen a Sasquatch holding a sheep before? No, sir. Actually, I have not. It wasn't terrifying because I didn't know that's what it was until I went over the evidence later. And I'm like, that was a Bigfoot looking at us making all the weird noise over there the whole time. Kind of glad I didn't see it in real time. I don't know what I would have done. Now I go looking for it. I've gotten in trouble a few times. I've had a one spider walk after me and my buddy. Dude, I listen. I still get chills talking about that because it's just one of them. It's kind of like PTSD. You're police officer. So I'm not saying you necessarily have it, but you can relate to it. I don't necessarily have it being a vet. We've done some things that, the military's trauma in itself. Let's be honest. Yeah, it was like midnight, and I'm firmly believe that they do a lot of ritualistic stuff at night. I've seen too many things take place at night where, okay, so that's why you don't want me around. Okay, that makes sense. I believe we witnessed or we're about to stumble on like some sort of birthing ritual or something because this was between spring and summer. I stands to reason to me they probably, I don't know if they would procreate on like a human time frame scale or would they follow more of like mammals in the woods. I don't know. But either way, I think that we got too close to the babies. And I looked at something on camera and I thought we were far enough away. And I'm zoomed in on my iPhone and he zoomed in on his iPhone and I'm like, and this thing's it's on all fours, but like a bear, just kind of like in a staging movement. And then I'm like, all right, let's get a little closer. And then all of a sudden it turned and just looked right at us. I'm like, okay, we need to go. Don't run. We're screwed if we run. It's over. We're going to be a midnight snack just like that. That was just it saying, you need to go. This was one of those nights where it's like, I knew because I just got off work. It was late Friday. And I called my buddy because he works like 3 to 12, and I'm like, dude, let's go do some midnight squatching. We've gotten some great footage before. Let's just one of those. I had the urge to do it, and it was a night when I believe it was a full moon, which that's I believe they respond to the lunar cycles pretty well. And I'm like, let's just see what we can find, man. We're going down. It's like it's a hiking trail in the back of a local park. It's like 6 or 7 hiking trails, but all of them connect to like private property with marshes and swamps. And the further west you go, you head up more towards like Dundee, Michigan, where like Cabela's and everything is out there, and it's really, really rural. The river raises and goes for 100 miles, so it's like it's a suitable location for a squatch. You know what I mean? So we're out in the woods, and I'm like, let's just kind of listen for a little bit, see what we can find. And we're just turning the corner, and that's when stuff starts. And it runs right next to a runway. Little Cessnas practice all their landings and stuff there. So we're walking right past this runway, and all of a sudden we just hear something snap from like the top of this tree, like almost just like something legit broke it. And I think that was like a vantage point that it was watching us from. And then I think that it gave its position away because, I mean, how big are these things? They're massive. I think a lot of times they don't understand that the trees don't support their weight. So now they're tattling on where they're at. But of course, you see like a ball of fur just kind of dissipate before it even hits the ground. And it's like, how is this even happening right now? You know what I mean? It was a really multifaceted night. And then by the time we got to the end of the trail, I was happy. This is when I think it's over. It's not over. I decided to look to the left, and that's where we first saw the like crouched Bigfoot. And I'm like, dude, they're doing something. We got to try to get a little bit closer, pushing the envelope. And it turned around like, okay, now you guys messed up. You came way too close. And I'm just backing out real slow. And this thing is just on its tippy toes, just like it's terrifying to even talk about, man. Picture like a deck. Picture something being able to stretch out down on all fours so much that it could like crawl out from under a front porch. And that's what it's doing, moving faster than you and I could at a full sprint. And it's literally just using its fingertips and its toe tips. And I'm like, okay, we're either going to be eaten or this is a personal escort right back out of the park. And once we got to a point where I think it felt safe, it just kind of turned around, got up on 2 legs, and took back off the way it came. And I'm like, thank you. We are out of here. And after that, we didn't do another night one until last night.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't have either, man. That's insane. That's really scary. And you talk about PTSD. I mean, that'll definitely give you PTSD, 100%. Some of the behavior these things do just leave me scratching my head. But that night, I know you had, you're a little different in the fact you've believed it since you were young. But after that first encounter that night, man, how did that affect you from that point? Like, how did that change your life?
To me, I think that like if you spend your life always being a believer, once you have an experience, it's just kind of like an affirmation that, okay, this is really what it's culminated to all along. I wasn't wasting my time. You know what I mean? It didn't change me. It got me to a point where it was like the rabbit hole goes deeper now, man. Now it's what are they? Then I'm learning that there's 5 different types, five, different sizes and different groups, different behaviors. And then I'm just going deeper and deeper and deeper with it. And it's just, now it just makes me want more. I spend so much time out there. It's like we've probably dedicated close to 4 years extensively at this research site alone. I've been gifting now for about 6 months, trying some new stuff. And like, I'll put a peanut butter sandwich up on like a tree branch, and these things will just take the bag. And then next thing you know, the sandwich will be gone. The bag will be hanging right back on the tree branch where it was. You're not going to have no raccoon do that. They're going to tear that open.
Yeah, I agree. I think that their behavior is very odd, and some of the things they do, it just leaves me scratching my head. Like, I think we're taking educated guesses trying to figure this stuff out. But, it's understandable that it affects you that way. It either goes one or two ways. You either stay completely out of the woods or it drives you to it. And I think there's one or the other. What do you think has been the strangest thing you've had happen since you've been researching this stuff?
I've had I could say 15 or 20 things that I really could not begin to even debunk. We got to figure out what it's not first. Because you know what, you and me, every time I want everything to be a Bigfoot. Of course I do. Give me all the Bigfoot. You know what I mean? We have to debunk first. But the craziest thing I've ever had happen would be, and I'll send you the video. We saw a portal, a massive glowing portal in this same spot where the spider crawling was going on. It's not the same night, but it's the same spot. And this portal starts off kind of like a glowing lightning ball, and then it just expands, it gets bigger, and then these beings are walking out of it. It's mind blowing to see, and I watch it still probably a few times a month.
You know, on this channel, I talk a lot about mysteries, but one of the mysteries I was able to solve lately, and I'm glad I did, was my back pain. After years of sitting, hiking, and long recording sessions, my lower back was screaming at me. Then I found something from a listener, Dan from Castleflex. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical at first because this device looks simple, but man, let me tell you, the first time I used this thing, it unlocked my spine in a way that I did not think was possible. Castleflex isn't your average stretch strap or towel. It's designed to decompress your spine and release deep tension through controlled stretching. You'll feel it instantly. My tightness just melts away, and suddenly I'm standing taller, breathing easier, and actually moving free again. If you're dealing with back pain and stiffness that just won't quit, trust me, this thing absolutely works. So go check it out at Castleflex/Mystery13 to find out why over 100,000 people have finally said goodbye to back pain. Now let's get right back to the mystery.
I'm debunking. There's natural gas lines out there. Maybe there's some sort of static electricity, blah, 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 affected the gas line, causing some sort of boom. But I'm like, no, because this is still going. I have 47 seconds of it going. It's actually about a 2-minute video, but a minute and a half or so was me swearing. So I edited that out and just left the portal part because people just want to see that. And when you look at how big this thing is, me on full zoom, dude, we're still probably 400 meters away from this thing. That means it would have had to have been 15 or 20 feet across in person.
That is extremely weird. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do with some of these things like that. You know, I hear about portals a lot. You know, you hear about orbs, portals, aliens, UFOs. All these things are tied to Bigfoot. Why that is, I still don't know. It's crazy to me that you have two sides of this. There's just the flesh and blood. There's the woo side. You know, a lot of times people come on the show and they just see it. They just happen to look and they see it crossing by or whatever. And then you have people like you that have had all these weird stuff happen. And I think sometimes it's tied to places, things like that. It's the only thing I can think of. And you know, it's hard to not sit back and think everything's Bigfoot. But when you have stuff like that happening, man, like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with all that. When you saw this portal, what do these things look like when they were coming out of it?
They were definitely humanoid in shape. I believe, I don't know the native term right off. I know it's part of Sasquatch. I believe it's a similar series of letters, but it means those who lean forward when they walk. And this thing has this massive stride. It's got the sagittal crest. It's got this, you know, the traditional shoulders slumped forward, walking right across where the portal is. So picture this sweet, you know, yellow ball with a Sasquatch walking in front of it.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this stuff, man, and it's so strange to me. And I don't know why either, that once you see one of these things, your odds of seeing them again go way up. I don't know if it's because you're marked. I don't like using that term, but There's something with that. I don't know if you're just more aware or they know that you've seen them or what that's about, but it's so strange to me. But then why do you think that there's so much activity there? And why do you think that portal's on that property? What do you think that's about?
Oh, that's a kind of a multifaceted question. I'll cover it two parts for you. Like, first off, when you said, like, I don't know how you tend to be more open to see it, I think it's because we start to establish a relationship with them. When you start to go out there enough and they start to learn your intentions and who you are, and honestly, I think that's the human DNA side. That's the kind of the maternal and the paternal instinct, kind of like, okay, they don't want to hurt us. They're curious. They bring us stuff to eat. You know what I mean? It gets to a point where we start to draw them in closer. And some people have made like finger to finger contact with them. Like there's people who've spent years and years and years. And it's like, I could only hope. I'm blessed enough that God has allowed me to have the experiences I've had in this field. I've caught some stuff like a portal in such vivid form. A lot of people will never get that, man. It's just a matter of doing what other people won't do to get what they can't get. You got to be willing to put yourself out there. The bloodiest battle of the War of 1812 took place right here in Monroe. So we already have bloodshed on the ground. We have a very dirty style of warfare. It's taken 15 minutes to reload our rifles. It's a lot of bayonet, a lot of cannon fire, a lot of just brutal hand to hand stuff, man. And once you shed blood, and it's two different sides too. I mean, that's different energies. That's different cultures. All of that is now opening up its own doorway. It's essentially a bait pile when you leave that kind of spiritual trauma behind. That's where the supernatural side of Sasquatch comes in. So everything, he's tied into all things. If you look at them of how they're created based on how you and I believe, they're some of the first things. I think Goliath was essentially the first prototype Bigfoot. I'll share that little tidbit of information with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. There's got to be more than flesh and blood with these things. And I think we've talked a little bit off camera before we started recording about your thoughts on these things. And I think we align a lot. Like we think a whole lot alike about these. And I think that one of the statements I've come up with is when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood. And when they're not, they're not. I don't know how to wrap my head around all this stuff, except from looking at it from a biblical perspective and that point of view. So I'm just going to jump right into it, man, because it's so interesting to me, man. Tell me your thoughts on what these things are.
You got it. I thought you'd never ask. Thanks. All right. Now, for all the people who are into like all the Enochian texts and like the Book of Jasher, the Ethiopian Bible, all of the unredacted biblical scriptures that the church really left out of the King James Version, they're still considered biblical canon, you know. So in my opinion, prior to the flood, you had the 200 watchers that God sent from heaven, and they descended upon Mount Hermon. This was initially God's instruction to say, all right, I'm trusting you guys to watch the earth. But of course, they have free will, and they chose to completely corrupt it, and that's how the giants were created. So the humans existed back then as well because the giants did their DNA manipulation thing with the women. You know what I mean? And then they made these giants. Like the angels slept with these women, these 40-foot red-haired giants were created. And then it's like, when you think about that, that's hard enough to wrap your mind around. 40-foot tall beings with like 8-foot tracks that are like 4 feet wide. That is just unbelievable for me to fathom right now. You know what I mean? And then God floods the earth because of all this evil DNA manipulations going on. Water was probably the only way to kill a being like that. Standard weaponry wouldn't kill something like that. He would have had to use water to kill him. Water brings life in. Water can also take life away. So I'm thinking that might be kind of symbolic in as far as scripture goes, maybe. And then after the flood, you have Lucifer, who's pissed because, God, he can't be his own God, essentially. So, as you know, he takes 1/3 of the angels. And in Genesis 6:5, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after, when the sons of God found the daughters of men to be fair, they bred with them again. This is the second go around of this evil DNA manipulation. So the war in heaven being post flood, angels come down, now they don't listen, they do their thing again. That's when Bigfoot gets created. That's when mermaids get created. The book of Enoch, chapter 7, verse 5, it says, and they began to defile themselves with the beasts of the earth and the fish of the sea. I mean, if that's not a hint at DNA manipulation, making our own beings, I don't know what is. And you're not going to have an angel physically breed with a human unless they have the ability to kind of be human. So that would be some crazy test tube baby type stuff. Early technology, early scientific DNA manipulation, like obviously if these women are having these giants prior to the flood, would they not die for giving birth to something like that? The babies would have to be 8 feet long. Like it's just completely mind blowing to me, and that's where I think Bigfoot came from. Primates being manipulated with humans, with angels, and now you have human intelligence and free will. That's why some can be kind and some choose not to be. You have this crazy climbing ability because you have all of the knowledge of being like a monkey and a primate, and then you have this supernatural aspect. So now you're basically like Hercules. I don't think they're immortal, but I do think they're really, really hard to kill if you ever had to.
That makes a whole lot of sense, and I think we agree on a whole lot. I think that a lot of it came down to DNA manipulation. I think that's a huge reason for the flood, and I've never really even thought about the significance of water with that. Because if you read the Bible at all, you know that water is one of the key things God used for creation, for baptism, for all these different things that it symbolizes. And so it makes sense to me. And I don't know if you went down the rabbit hole of what happens to the Nephilim once their body passes away. I think that's where we get the demonic entities today, is from the Nephilim. I think that's a disembodied spirit after they passed away. But I agree. I think that's where the origins of Bigfoot come from. I think we're all taking extremely educated guesses, but I think to me that makes some of the best sense. I couldn't have said it better myself. When you look at that and you look at the perspective of that, it really changes the way that you look at the world. How long did it take you to land on that thought pattern?
Man, because like I said, my journey started nearly 30 years ago, and then it's just going from I knew that it was naive to think that there wasn't something out there. There was just too much going on in the world, too many sightings all over the place. And it's like, not everybody's hoaxing, not everybody's lying. There's too much of a global phenomenon for this. It's not some mass hysteria. These things were on a 1959 US Army survival map as being part of the flora and fauna to be aware of, as being out there on the training ground. Like, they're not going to mess with you, but don't engage them. Like straight up on the map. Like I've been trying to find a copy of that, obviously, but might want to ask the Smithsonian where that is.
It's all in our history. And if you look at Native American culture and their history, it's in their history as well. I mean, you go back as far as you want, and there's stories all throughout history of these creatures. I would love to know, and I know that and maybe you've had a dogman encounter. We've not talked about it, but what do you think that is? What do you think the connection to Bigfoot is with that? And you brought up a lot of trauma and warfare. If you look at places where a lot of bloodsheds happen, a lot of bad things have happened, like the LBL, there's all kinds of stuff in the land between the lakes. And I think it's tied to those kind of things. What do you think about Dogman? Where does that fit into the picture for you?
I do have a photo of what I believe is a dogman that was out there at the same time we were hiking out there one night. I can send you that as well. Dogmen for me, and that's Michigan's cryptid, man. The very first sighting of Dogman was in Wexford County, Michigan in 1887. This whole group of like wolves and dogs came to the shore and they fired a shot off, and all of them ran except for one, and that one stood on its hind legs. And he described it as having glowing amber eyes and being 9 or 10 feet tall. And I'm like, you better chase it down with the bayonet. You're going to be better off going melee with that thing than you are trying to shoot it with a little, 50 caliber lead ball. And I think dogmen it's really hard for me because I also think there's werewolves. And I think that dogmen and werewolves are not the same thing. Werewolves are more of a spiritual, more of a demonic aspect, I think. And I think that's where your shamans and your black magic comes into play for that sort of stuff. Skinwalker type activity. And a dogman, I think, is just another cryptid that is a DNA manipulation of the fallen. They're sleeping with literally all and breeding with all these creatures. You're going to have these satyrs and these centaurs and these half and half DNA manipulated beings. And I think that Dogman is just another one of those. But I think werewolves are something that is done via curse. I think King Nebuchadnezzar when God sentenced him to be the beast of the field for 7 years. I think that was a curse of the werewolf.
That's a good way to look at it, man. It all comes back down to that, and I think that there definitely could be two different things. My buddy Daniel with the Cryptid Podcast, he co-hosts on the show every once in a while, and he talks about an encounter his dad had. I can't remember where it happened. I want to say maybe Alaska, but he had a werewolf encounter, and he's very adamant in distinguishing the difference. It's not Dogman, it's werewolf, and I think that werewolf is could be definitely one thing, and Dogman a completely other. I think that they're not good. I think that they're definitely have bad intentions and they thrive on fear. I talk to way too many people that have these encounters and they walk away just extremely terrified. Not that Bigfoot's not terrifying, but going back to your first encounter in that cabin in Ohio, could you give us a better description of what you saw in that picture? Kind of maybe what the face looked like. I don't know how much you could tell. I know it was definitely you could see a lot, but man, if you could tell us a little bit more about that, I'd love to hear it.
This thing had to have been, if I can see it in my head still. It was a pretty ape-like face, but do you remember Swamp Thing? You remember Swamp Thing had that kind of like triangular sort of foliage patch on his face? That's what the Sasquatch had. I would say the Sasquatch almost had a face very similar to Swamp Thing, somewhat human, but still very much a part of the forest. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That's why they call them the forest people. But it has this sheep. This is probably a good 75 or 80-pound sheep. You have this human Swamp Thing like face. You got this sheep that it clearly took from the property where the Airbnb was located. And then the sheep seemed chill. It wasn't like, this was probably 200 feet away from us. And you're not hearing bleeding or anything. Either it was already dead, which is a possibility, and I'm just kind of seeing it just sort of, lifelessly being there, or they have this calming effect about them where they can chill them out from freaking out. It's one or the other. And I'm like, all right, you too, but how? Leave it to me for my first encounter to be a Sasquatch carrying a sheep. This thing had to have been 8.5 feet tall, easy 400 pounds plus. So it was a big one.
I think that, I mean, that's really strange. I've heard a lot of different stuff. I've never heard of one walking off with a sheep before. I know they do that. I've had people come on the show where they've seen these things, snatch a deer. I know there was one guy who was hunting one time and he was about to shoot this deer and this Bigfoot jumped out of the bush and grabbed this thing and had this moment, this standoff with this creature. And, so that stuff happens. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, they got to eat. So there's a physical aspect to these things somehow. But yeah, it's just so fascinating to me. And I would love to know, man, what you would say to somebody that's listening to this episode tonight that maybe is on the fence, whether they believe or not. What would you say to them about these encounters to maybe open up their eyes and to think more logically, to understand that these things are real, they're out there, and it's important that people know that they're there?
First off, go to a location that is active, one that there's going to be activity. Like, I could take a non-believer out to my site at any time, and I might not get them to believe, but I will get them to acknowledge that there's unexplainable phenomena that's taking place. It's not the squirrels that are throwing, tree branches at you like ninja stars. That's not the squirrels doing that. That's them literally, hey, guess what? You're not the only one out here right now. You look for the little behaviors. A subtlety is where you're going to see the truth about Bigfoot. Not the going out in the woods with the entire film crew and all that kind of stuff. You're going to find Bigfoot when he wants to find you. I feel like they feel us out. Are you out there to exploit me, or are you genuinely concerned about my existence? You know what I mean? They know that stuff. They know when I'm getting out of the car before I even get back to the trail. Also, if you really want a secret, guys, I'm telling you right now, watermelon, pineapple, cantaloupe. You're going to get them to show up on your trail camera. I swear, with that fruit. Because my thing is, I did a 4-day gifting experiment doing like layered scent type theories to see what they would eat and what they wouldn't. They ate it every time, and each time I caught something on camera that I couldn't explain. I actually have a fingernail reaching around the left-hand side of my IR, a very large fingernail, and you have this almost porcupine quillish type arm hair, and it is just tinkering with my camera. Then it smacks it. The whole camera knocks this way, and you just hear something walk off.
Awesome. That's some solid advice, man. I think that's a good way to look at this stuff. And I started this channel. I wanted people to have a safe place to share their encounters, but I also wanted to open up people's minds to realize that these things are there and make it easier for people to talk about. So I'm glad that you're coming on here and sharing all this. And I'm excited to go through this evidence and get some of this stuff out there. You got to tell me, I know last night you went out and you had a couple things happen. So, man, if you're open to it, I'd love to hear about that.
Okay. Yep. Now, last night was something that I kind of wanted to just go do to see what we could find because this was the latest we had been out there, like I said, since the spider walking incident, probably. About the time we went last night was like 1:32 in the morning. That's about the time last when we had that happen. And I think it was just a subconscious, let's give it a few months before we do this again. You know what I mean? And we were out there and I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. I was hoping for a lot, but I always am. I never want to have any dry hunts, but it's like fishing, you have fun with it regardless whether you catch anything or not. And there's a certain part of the trail where that's where most of the game trails are. And I think that's kind of where it's sort of a meeting place for things at the time that are hunting, that are looking for food. And that's a lot of times where you're going to see a lot of your deer bedding down. And I saw a couple deer and they ran off. I didn't think anything of it. It happens all the time. And then suddenly we started getting stuff thrown at us. And that happens every time we're out there after dark now. Every damn time without fail. And I don't think it's like a, hey, get out of here, I'm busy. I think it's a, oh, it's the guys that feed us all the cool snacks. Let's play with them a little bit. I think we're establishing a relationship that way. There's a rapport there now. And there was a lot of like, I'd hear something over here, my buddy'd hear something over here. And the second you hear a sound, your brain automatically moves towards the newest sound. That's just the way it is. It's really hard to untrain that. And every time, like, there'd be a snap here, I'd look, there'd be a snap here, there'd be one behind us, there'd be like two wood knocks over here, and then you'd hear something crash across the trail up there. Just almost like guerrilla warfare style phenomena was taking place. Nothing terrifying. I think they were just having fun with us, which thank God it was just fun. I love being out there, man. I just enjoy it. Like it's scary. I'll send you the one I have of the eye shine. That's actually on my Urban Bigfoot page as well. That was the Sasquatch that it's got about a 5 or 6 inch eye spacing in between each eye. It's a big boy. It was probably 8.5, 9 feet tall, I would say. And I'm right on camera with it. You'll see the face. It's about 40 feet away from me. I will send that to you. That was the most terrifying but exhilarating experience I've ever had. And then the portal would have been the weirdest.
Okay, you can't just drop that on us and not tell us the story. So you got to tell us what happened.
I wasn't expecting that. Me and Jake's my tech guy pretty much. Like I'm not out there, I want to keep it organic. I just pretty much want it to be the headlamp and my phone doing most of the work. And if you want to do wood knocking, something like a Louisville Slugger would be ideal. That's going to be the closest decibel range you're going to get wood knocking to kind of like maybe trigger them a little bit. But um, we're going down the trail, and this is before I even started filming. Right next to the fence, because again, this is a runway. This is like out nearby where my gifting area is. This is where nearby where the airport is next door, and all of a sudden you hear something that sounds like, how do I put this? Remember the first Rambo, First Blood, when he jumps and starts crashing through the trees? That's what it sounded like. And you just hear something scrambling to get away, like, oh crap, they saw me. Like, and then it hopped the fence. We didn't see it again. And I'm like, I wish I would have been live right now for that happening. Like, I wish I would have been Facebook Live. And I'm like, if that's any indication as to how our night's going to go, man, I'm in. And then I go live, and then I'm like, all right, because I had every intention of doing our first Urban Bigfoot Live. We call ourselves the Urban Squatchers. It's a little side project I created because it's just me and my buddy. And you got about, I'd say a quarter mile in, even further. And I'm like, look at that eye shine. And this thing's eyes are just these two glowing green coals. And again, picture half a foot of distance in between them. eye sockets are deep. You can see a brow line, and then above the brow line, you can see like spikier hair, a primate like face. I would call that a type 1 Bigfoot that I saw, the most patty like gorilla looking one. And that's exactly the best way that I can describe that thing. And you'll see when I send you the video. Honestly, if you can brighten it up or enhance anything in it, please, because I would think it'd be some pretty groundbreaking evidence if we can get it cleaned up enough. Because we're 40 feet away. And there's people telling me this is a deer, and I'm like, you're right. I forgot about that deer that walks on the two back legs. You're right. Silly me. You know what I mean? It must be a new species.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And I know something tells me it's probably not the last time I'm going to hear from you with this stuff. But, man, why don't you just real quick shout your stuff out? Where can people find you? All that good stuff, man.
The best place to find me right now, we are in the process of making a YouTube channel. I'm having Jake, my research buddy, he's going to be kind of like being the one to sort of create that. We're going to have a YouTube page up before long. Right now, the best place to get a hold of us is on Urban Bigfoot. It's a group or a Facebook page. You're going to find me on there, and you're going to find a lot of my evidence uploaded already on there too. Like the stuff I'm sending you is already been viewed thousands of times by people, so it's already public knowledge. So I'm more than happy to send it to you to share with your, personal audience if you want as well.
Yeah, I would love to have that on there, man, and I'll upload it on this video. But man, I appreciate you coming on. That was a lot of fun. I love talking about this stuff. I think me and you share a lot of the similar views. We got the same haircut. We got the beard going on. So maybe I just need to come out there and hang out with you, man, and go look for this thing. I would love to do that. But, man, again, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you so much for your service. I really mean that. I have so much respect for veterans, and we wouldn't have the freedoms today, man, without you guys. So thanks for that. Thanks for coming on the show, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you better, man.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I know you enjoyed that. Bigfoot is such a strange thing, and this is a really strange world. I say it all the time. There's so much in God's universe we just do not understand. But hopefully with people like him, people researching, more and more people coming forward, we can get some answers that we've been looking for. A lot of times I walk away scratching my head, trying to figure this stuff out. But hopefully we're learning more every single time. It's important people know that these things are out there. But I just want to say thanks for being part of this community. Couldn't do it without you. I really appreciate all the support. This channel would not be in existence without people just like you and people that come on the show. So I hope you guys are doing great. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.